The diplomatic shuttle slid through the upper atmosphere like a comet that had learned restraint, contrails smoothing into the amber evening above Valoria. Commander John Morton adjusted the cuffs of Federation dress blues he'd worn 100 times and loved exactly none. The fabric fit like a promise he hadn't decided to keep. Beyond the viewport, the capital unfurled in tiers of gleaming terraces and living glass. Architecture that breathed the Illyrian style of grafting biocrystal to stone, so buildings grew with the city. He'd read as much in the briefing. Reading hadn't prepared him for the way the spires caught the sun and sang. They set down on Royal Landing. A half-moon of light, suspended above a lake, so still the city floated in it twice. Morning banners hung along the approach, long streamers of indigo, with a single silver thread. Illyrian custom. One thread severed from a family weave, until the rightful successor wove it back in. In other words, the king is gone. The world, not whole. Commander Morton. The pilot said over his shoulder. Local time, late afternoon. Protocol states. I know the protocol. Yon murmuret. And still his hand tugged his jacket flat. No complications. He promised himself. Deliver condolences. Offer the treaty. Board the shuttle. He'd been telling himself that, since orbit, the ramp sighed down into fragrant air citrus and something like rain on stone. The reception line was smaller than Federation pomp, would have demanded a handful of guards in dark lacquered armor, and at their head, a woman whose presence reset the gravity. Princess Thalia of Vara walked forward with the composure of a blade in its sheath. Emerald skin lustered by the light. Silver-white hair braided into looping patterns, threaded with dimly glowing beads. Her eyes, a luminous impossible blue, assessed him and did not look away. Commander Morton, she said, turning his human name into Aloy. Welcome to Alaris. The Federation's message reached us. Your condolences are received. He bowed, feeling suddenly aware of the 1,000 tiny ways humans moved wrong on alien worlds. Your Highness, on behalf of the Council, I grieve with your people. King Orion's reputation touched even our cadets. He meant it. One of the first lessons at the Academy had been about Orion's ceasefire along the rim. It had saved a cohort of green pilots, including a boy named Morton, from flying into a meat grinder. For a heartbeat, her face showed the fatigue beneath ceremony. A cough of grief that hadn't cleared. Then it was gone. Words are easier than peace. Commander, please. She turned walk. They crossed a bridge of translucent stone over the lake. Fish moved in slow parabolas below, throwing opaline shadows onto their faces. The palace rose beyond, not a single monolith, but a constellation of structures connected by arched conduits that pulsed faintly. Like vines. Ajedien. Palaces lived. The briefing had not managed to make that literal. Forgive a warrior's bluntness, Thalia said as their guards fell back enough to leave space for honesty. Why a commander and not a diplomat? Symbolism, John said. Then let more truth through. And reach. Some doors open faster if the person knocking can park a destroyer in orbit. Her mouth made a shape that wasn't quite a smile. So the Federation's protection arrives, wearing medals instead of olive branches. He might have replied with rehearsal-smooth lines about partnership and shared security. He'd practiced them all the way from Centaurus, but the palace doors opened then, spilling a wash of cool light over polished stone. Inside, morning silk hung, in long vertical bands, each band stitched with sigils that shifted when he tried to focus. The Illyrian head archivist later would tell him the sigils recorded the king's deeds, and the palace read them nightly like prayer. Their steps hushed on the floor. A pair of elderly attendants pressed their palms to their hearts when Thalia passed, then brushed their fingers through a basin of luminous water. John catalogued that. 2. Grief, ritual. Cleansing of memory. Quick enough to fit into days that still demanded work. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and heated crystal. Even their mourning felt intentional. My father's study, Thalia said, and led him into a chamber suspended between public grandeur and private time. Hollow stars drifted under the ceiling like embers. The desk was tidy in the way of messes, cleaned by someone who knows where things belong. Shelves held books with living spines that flexed when air moved. Their scripts crawled like vines. John stood in the old man's space and delivered the speech he'd been paid in trust to carry. He watched Thalia's face as he spoke of deterrence and promised patrol schedules, of sensor nets and interdictors, of how the Federation stood beside allies in moments of vulnerability. Her gaze never left him. When he finished, the silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was diagnostic. "You speak carefully," she said at last. "I wear this uniform carefully," he answered. "Carelessness looks like invasion, even when it intends to help." She drifted a palm along the edge of her father's desk, as if smoothing the fur of a dangerous animal. "Our council is attentive. They will ask what price protection requires this season. It has required much in others." "Then I'll answer," he said. He didn't add that several members of her council were pinging his secure channel with polite delays, and one coarse refusal. Federation channels had gone a little staticky since entering Alarian near space. He told himself it was atmospheric refracting. It felt like someone pinching a wire. She pivoted with a swift answer's decision. "Before we feed you to the wolves," she said, "would you see something that isn't in your dossiers?" He almost smiled. "Curiosity is a professional hazard." "Good." She touched a panel inset into a bookcase. The wood sighed and opened into a spiral stair that dropped into the palace's bones. "Bring your hazard." They descended past layers of cool stone and humming conduits. John felt something he did not like, admitting an itch behind the sternum. A pressure differential in the quiet. He'd learned to listen to instincts that had no obvious cause. More than once they'd gotten him and his people home. The chamber at the bottom swallowed sound and sent it back altered. A circular room lit by the walls themselves in a pale blue that made the air seem denser. Along the perimeter, cases of devices that looked like sculptures until the mind gave up and called them machines. Some were familiar in outline and engine, and a field generator, until you followed a curve and found a mathematics humans hadn't written yet. The center platform held a suit of armor. It was not grand. It was wrong. It looked as if it had been assembled by a memory trying to recall a body. The breastplate resembled folded leaf metal. The joints seemed to have been woven, not machined. Dust lay on it like the last thin snow of winter. "Our chamber of relics," Thalia said softly. "We tell our children, these are the toys of our golden age. They believe us until they see them breathing." She nodded to the armor. "This belonged to our greatest warrior king. Legends say it chose its wearer. And legends say many things after wine," John said, and then wished he'd chosen a different sentence in the presence of a grieving princess. But she laughed. Clear and quick. "True. No one has woken it in generations. We have studied it, coaxed it, sung to it. Alarian sciences and superstition, exhausted." Her eyes sparkled with a challenge that felt designed to find out what kind of man he was under medals. "Human hence, Commander. For entertainment only, unless you are afraid of old clothes." He frowned at the itch behind his breastbone. The armor looked like a storm about to admit it was a sea. "Afraid," he said. "No. Respectful of breaking museum glass." "Yes." Her chin tipped toward the platform. "Consider it an act of diplomatic curiosity. If it humiliates anyone, let it humiliate me. I invited you." He stepped up. The pressure in the room, making his skin tighten, as if anticipating lightning. He told himself it was ridiculous to feel watched by metal. He reached out and brushed dust from the breastplate with 2 fingers. The room exhaled. Lines woke on the armor's surface in a cascade of blue. like frost. Racing a window, the dust leapt away without falling. The entire suit sighed apart into 100 humming tessellations that hung in the air with insect stillness and then slid toward him like a decision made elsewhere. What he began, and swallowed the rest with the reflexes that had kept him alive in ambushes. The pieces wrapped him in layers, no weight. Only presence. The material was warm. Not metal. Not fabric. Something that obeyed both. The helmet settled, and the world snapped into a new resolution. He didn't see data so much as understanding arrived where sight used to be. Star maps. Nested in star maps. Flight patterns that anticipated wind 6 seconds from now. The thermal signature of Thalia's hand as her fingers rose to her lips. Tactile memory whispered down his bones training stances. The way to shift weight on a surface that was about to betray you. The taste of copper and snow in an enemy's air. Impossible. She breathed. The word moving like a prayer in a temple she hadn't expected to answer. He took his first step. And the suit took it with him. As if the two had agreed long ago to meet here. Princess. His voice said. Filtered. Harmonized into something both his and not. What is happening to me? An old story. She said. Eyes shining. Has decided it remembers your name. The floor shuddered. Not imagination. A low ripple that translated through the armor into a string of data detonation vector. Shockwave strength. Epicenter above. Then a second. Nearer. The walls dimmed and flared. In Thalia's ear. A comm jewel sparked to frantic life. Your Highness. An officer's voice rushed through. Unidentified vessels in orbit. They're not answering hails. Multiple dropships. The Eastern Shield Dome is at 62%. The channel cut with static. Thalia's poise thickened into command. General Toran will have the palace shielded. We need the command center. Now. She stared at John. At the living lattice wrapped around his shoulders. Awe had not left her face. It had merely made a space for fear. The armor chose you. I don't know why. But I know what the choosing means. He turned toward the stair. The suit rebalanced his stride until the steps took him as if they belonged to his feet. You can explain on the way? They rose through the palace in a private conveyance. She awakened with a palm print and a phrase in an older tongue that made the walls lean closer to listen. The tube climbed with a soft hydraulic song. In the narrow space, she stood close enough that the faint floral electricity of her hair brushed his shoulder. Through the suit's strange empathy, he felt her pulse accelerate, and wasn't sure whose heartbeat the armor was reading. It is more than armor, she said. Eyes forward. Voice pitched to skewer, both panic and prophecy. It is a machine that remembers our first wars. It is a weapon that listens. Our books say that when our darkest hour returned, an outsider would wake the guardian. We assumed outsider meant distant Alarian blood. Some branch we forgot to prune. We never thought human. He finished for her. The words sounded different inside the helmet, as if it had a second meaning he hadn't learned yet. The tube slowed. The doors opened on controlled chaos officers, bent over consoles projecting rippling holograms of the city. Runners, vaulting steps 2 at a time. Comms, peeling off bad news in disciplined sequence. Your Highness, an older soldier said. Relief and steel braided together. Shields holding for now. The outer districts are breached. Drones of unknown composition. Absorbing energy fire. Thalia gestured to John. This is Commander Morton, of the Federation. She seemed to search for a noun large enough and then simply said, is our chance. General Toran stared one heartbeat too long. Then nodded sharply. Soldier to soldier. If it woke for you, it woke for a reason. John stepped toward the main display. The city's perimeter pulsed in wounded segments. Through the armor's sight, the invaders weren't silhouettes. so much as hollows, places that refused light and bled cold into the map. An ache rose in his chest, and the suit tasted it and translated it into a vector. "I need to be at the eastern barrier," he said, already turning. He had not intended to take her with him. He knew by the way she fell into step that leaving her behind would have been the better fiction. "Alaris doesn't send champions to fight alone," she said simply, as if stating the planet's gravity. "Not anymore." Somewhere above, something struck the shield and made the whole palace sing on a frequency his bones remembered from other sieges. The armor adjusted around his ribs as if it had just decided they were worth keeping. "Then let's make your old story true," John said. And the suit hummed in agreement. The first blast shook the palace like a thunderclap inside a cathedral. Through the armor, John felt the vibration as data shock waves. Energy signatures. Stress points in the shield lattice, all feeding directly into his nerves. The suit's awareness merged with his own until he couldn't tell where one ended, and the other began. "All units to defensive positions," Thalia's voice rang out, calm cutting through chaos. Guards sprinted through arched corridors of living glass, their boots echoing off resonant floors that pulsed faintly in alarm colors. The air smelled of ozone and something ancient waking up. "Yon Mubasilha." The armor mapping escape routes faster than thought. On a high balcony overlooking Valoria, the city burned like a circuit board, bursts of dark energy tearing through the evening haze. Black ships hung above the horizon, their outlines flickering like shadows pretending to be solid. "Voidborn," Thalia whispered, and her tone shifted from royal authority to raw memory. "We thought them extinct." "Not extinct," John said grimly. "Just patient." The armor confirmed it. The signatures matched archived myth. Entities that devoured light itself, that hunted civilizations until there was nothing left to remember them. He felt the armor hum with purpose, like recognition. Down below, energy domes flickered as Alarian defenses faltered. Soldiers fell back toward the palace. John turned to Thalia. "You have ground troops?" She nodded. "Thousands. Imbue our weapon drain too slowly. Energy scatterers can't harm the void." "Maybe this can," John said, raising a gauntleted hand. The armor responded instantly. Light gathered around his palm, compressing into a sharp sphere, before releasing in a pulse that streaked across the skyline. It struck a void-born drone mid-air, and for the first time, something made of shadow screamed. Every officer on the command deck stopped. For a moment, hope looked like disbelief. Thalia's eyes widened. "You just did what our entire fleet couldn't." John flexed his fingers, feeling the armor's pulse sync with his own heartbeat. "Then we've got work to do." They moved together through the palace toward the eastern barrier, the corridors alive with fleeing courtiers, priests, and servants clutching relics. Outside, the world was falling apart. But inside the palace, there was rhythm, two leaders adapting in the space between disaster and survival. At the gate, the sky boiled with violet fire. The eastern shield flared under the onslaught. Soldiers braced themselves, exhausted but unwilling to break formation. The sight tightened something in John's chest, the familiar ache of command, of men and women, holding a line they knew might not hold. Thalia raised her hand, and the palace's defensive pylons responded, drawing new power from the deep conduits underfoot. "Our shields draw life energy from the planet," she said. "If they fail completely, we weaken the core. Then we make sure they don't fail." John stepped forward, feeling the armor's system sink to the shield frequencies. A low tone built inside his chest, the sound of resonance. He reached toward the shimmering barrier, and the armor projected energy outward in a perfect counter-frequency. The dome brightened, stabilized. The soldiers gasped. Thalia turned toward him, her face lit by blue radiance. For a heartbeat. She looked not like a monarch but like something elemental, her skin glowing. Eyes reflecting galaxies. You're channeling the city's entire grid. John smiled behind his visor. Borrowing it. I'll return it in one piece. Her laughter was soft. A relief amid the chaos. Commander, if you survive this, my scientists will never forgive you for not being born Alarian. He almost said, maybe I was. Once. The armor pulsed at that thought, as if agreeing. Before he could question it, a new wave of Voidborn surged through the outer wall, formless creatures, their edges fraying like smoke torn by wind. The soldiers opened fire, but their bolts dissolved into darkness. Fall back. Thalia ordered. No. John said, stepping forward. Hold the line. The armor's patterns flared, and arcs of white-blue energy erupted from his gauntlets. The beams met shadow, turning darkness into dust. Every movement felt natural, as if the suit anticipated his intent, amplifying every decision with ancient precision. But each pulse drained him. He felt it in the tremor of his limbs, the slow burn under his skin. The armor fed on his life force, a toll for its power. Thalia saw it too. You're burning out. Stop. Can't. They'll breach the inner ring. He pushed forward, cutting through, wave after wave. The creatures shrieked, retreating toward the outer streets. The soldiers cheered, disbelief turning to adrenaline. But when the last shadow fell, John staggered. The armor dimmed. Thalia caught him before he hit the ground, her hands cool against the heated plates. Through the armor, he could feel her, not just the contact, but her pulse. Her fear, her determination bleeding into his own. The armor's draining you, she said. It's alive, but it's killing you. He looked up, trying to smile. It has terrible bedside manners. Even now, she found breath to laugh. There's a way to restore you, a transfer ritual. My ancestors used it to share energy with the Guardian, but it requires proximity. Her tone softened, the words heavier than they sounded. And trust. He studied her, the war still roaring in the distance. You're the only one I trust right now. The air thickened between them. For a moment, the alarms faded. The world felt suspended in blue light and heartbeat rhythm. Then she took his hand, bare skin against alien metal, and led him back through a hidden corridor toward the inner sanctum beneath the palace. As the door sealed behind them, John's vision swam. The armor murmured in his mind, flickers of untranslated code flashing across his senses. Bond required. Symbiosis incomplete. Thalia stopped before a large circular chamber lined with glyphs that shimmered like constellations underwater. This place was built for the Guardian, she said, turning to face him. It will answer the connection between you and me if we let it. Joan's breath came unevenly. The armor's glow dimmed to a heartbeat shimmer. What happens if we don't? She stepped closer, until their faces were inches apart. Then Alaristis. The lights of the chamber rose around them, spinning slowly, in a pattern like twin stars orbiting one another. John didn't know if it was the armor's hum or the moment itself, but his pulse synced to hers. He felt the gravity of choice. And in that gravity, war and fear fell silent, replaced by something far more dangerous. Then teach me, Princess, he said quietly, before it's too late. Her eyes lifted to meet his, glowing with that impossible blue light. Call me Thalia. Commander. For what comes next? Formality would only get in the way. The chamber light flared, swallowing their shadows as the ritual began. The chamber beneath the palace felt like the heart of the planet itself. The walls breathed faint light through veins of crystal, every pulse echoing the rhythm of Thalia's steps as she guided John toward the dais at its center. He could barely stand. The armor's glow had faded to faint traceries of blue along his shoulders and chest, as though the living metal were conserving the last flicker of its strength. Yet even exhausted, he felt alive in a way he hadn't since leaving Earth, as if the suit had peeled back layers of his own humanity and shown him what waited underneath. Thalia turned, her silver hair luminous in the soft blue radiance. "This place is called the Core Sanctum," she said quietly. "It's where our ancestors once spoke to the energy that sustains our world. The armor was forged here." Her voice trembled slightly at the edges, the first crack he'd heard in it since the attack began. The Guardian could draw life energy from another, being through resonance, two hearts, one frequency. It's the only way to keep you alive now. John managed a weak smile. "So we synchronize." Thalia's eyes lifted to his. "Steady again." "Exactly. Trust me." She raised her hands, fingers tracing symbols into the air. Lines of light spun around them, weaving geometric spirals that hovered and hummed like a choir at the edge of hearing. When her palms met his chest plate, the armor responded instantly, the pattern spreading outward, glowing brighter. John felt warmth rush through him. Not heat, but presence. It wasn't just Thalia's energy, it was her thoughts, her memories, the echo of her heartbeat. For a moment, he saw flashes through her eyes, a father's laugh during training drills in the royal garden, the pressure of court politics, the weight of a crown she never wanted to wear. And then his memories followed the metallic scent of rain on Earth's training grounds, the faces of soldiers he'd led and lost, the quiet ache of always leaving before he could belong. The armor translated memory into light, two lives intertwined, their patterns spiraling together like twin galaxies. Thalia gasped softly. "It's working. Your vitals are stabilizing." He could feel it too. The armor brightened, energy running through it in smooth waves rather than spasms. The fatigue that had hollowed him out began to ebb, replaced by calm clarity. Yet what startled him most wasn't the power returning, it was the connection. He could feel her every thought shaded with warmth, determination, even fear. It was intimate in a way no touch could be. He saw himself through her perception, a stranger wrapped in alien metal, carrying the weight of an ancient prophecy. And yet, under her gaze, there was something else, the spark of belief. "Thalia," he murmured, his voice resonating through the chamber, doubled by the armor's tone. "How did your people build something that understands emotion?" She smiled faintly. "We didn't build it. We grew it. The Guardian is part machine, part consciousness shaped by the hearts of its creators. It responds to will, not command." The sigil surrounding them flared brighter, feeding light into the armor's veins. The hum in the air shifted pitch. Deeper now, more certain. But with the strength came visions, data floods that weren't his. John staggered, clutching his head as star maps and ancient battles cascaded through his mind. He saw entire civilizations fighting the same shadowy enemy, devouring Alaris now. The first Guardian, an Alarian warrior king, falling beneath a wave of darkness while protecting a radiant core of energy pulsing in his arms. "The heart of Alaris," John whispered. The words weren't his own, they came from the armor. "It's real." Thalia's expression changed, a mix of awe and dread. "You've seen it?" "Yes." The armor remembers. He took a breath, steadying himself. "The Voidborn are after it, a power source beneath the throne. Your ancestors built this armor to defend it." She stepped back, shock flashing across her face. "The heart is a legend, a myth. My father spent his life chasing. It's said to contain the life of our world itself." John nodded slowly. The armor just confirmed it's more than legend. And it's connected to me. Her brows drew together. Connected? How? He hesitated. Then said what he barely believed himself. Humans were part of it. Your ancestors visited Earth long ago. They left fragments of themselves in our genetic code as safeguard. That's why the armor responded to me. It recognized the pattern. Thalia stared at him. Her voice barely above a whisper. Then you carry the blood of my people. He met her chaza. And for a moment the enormity of it fell away. It wasn't about empires or species, just two people standing on the same impossible threshold, bound by something neither of them had chosen, but both now shared. Around them, the chamber lights began to fade back to normal. The ritual complete. The armor's glow settled into a steady heartbeat rhythm, matching his pulse and hers. John exhaled, testing his strength. I think the Guardian's awake again. Thalia nodded, though her expression held new concern. Then the Voidborn will sense it. They're drawn to the heart's resonance, and to you now. The moment between them tightened, weighted with the understanding that what bound them also painted a target across the stars. John extended his armored hand. Then we find the heart first. She placed her palm against his idius. Skin to metal. And the armor responded a faint harmonic ringing that spread outward like a promise. Together, she said. Above them, the walls of the sanctum trembled as another explosion rocked the city. The light symbols flared once more, as though the planet itself were urging them onward. The world above the sanctum was no longer a city, it was a battlefield. Valoria's once crystalline skyline burned in streaks of violet and amber, the air thick with the hum of collapsing shield lines. John and Thalia emerged into that chaos like twin sparks thrown from the planet's core. The armor had changed. Its surface shimmered with living light. Thin filaments tracing every joint below, faintly mirroring Thalia's own energy signature. The neural link they had forged in the ritual hadn't faded. It breathed with them. The palace trembled as another detonation rippled through the eastern wing. From the upper terraces, they could see the capital's outer ring streets blackened. The outer barriers, falling one by one. John flexed his gauntlet. The Voidborn are concentrating on the palace. They know where the heart is. Thalia's eyes narrowed. Then we'll make sure they reach nothing but their own ruin. They moved fast through the devastated corridors, their footsteps echoing in rhythm. The armor fed him information as they ran stress fractures in the palace structure. Enemy movements. The patterns of the shield grid. The suit seemed to anticipate his intent before he did shifting balance. Adjusting angles. Reading Thalia's movements as though she were another limb. Outside, squads of Valerian soldiers fought to hold the courtyards. When the pair appeared, the troops turned as one. Disbelief, flashing into awe. The Guardian walks again, someone shouted. The words rippled through the ranks like electricity, restoring morale where none should have existed. John raised his arm and projected a luminous barrier, intercepting a volley of dark energy that would have erased a platoon. The blast dissipated harmlessly against the shield. When the light cleared, Thalia stood beside him. Weapons, blazing silver arcs that cut through the shadows. The sight of their queen and the alien commander fighting side by side ignited the defenders into renewed fury. The counteroffensive was brief but decisive. As the last wave broke, the surviving soldiers saluted, their armor gleaming with soot and pride. Thalia nodded to her people. Hold the line. Whatever happens. Protect the civilians. Then she turned to John, her voice dropping to something almost private. The throne room lies ahead. If the heart exists, that's where it will be. They passed through corridors that once held paintings and court ceremonies, now shattered by the tremor of impact. John felt the armor tighten around him. A warning, something vast waited ahead. He glanced at Thalia. Eva Amitron. She carried herself with quiet grace, grief, and command, perfectly interwoven. They reached the grand doors of the throne hall just as another explosion tore through the far wall, through the smoke. The sky was a dark whirlpool of storm clouds and alien fire. On the horizon, the silhouette of a massive void-borne ship drifted closer, spilling tendrils of shadow toward the surface. It's feeding from the planet, Thalia said, drawing energy straight from the heart's resonance. Then that's our proof it's real, John answered, and that it's time to end this. They pushed through the sundered doors. The throne room had become an echo of its former beauty. Columns carved with golden runes were wrapped now in black tendrils that pulsed like veins. The throne itself, once the seat of Valerian history, was fractured. The stone dais beneath it cracked open to reveal a pulse of azure light. The heart of Valeris. Floating above it was the Void Lord. Its form wavered between solidity and mist. An impossible silhouette with too many eyes, and none at all. The air itself bent around its presence. When it spoke, the sound was like gravel through water. At last, the Guardian returns, and it wears a human shell. Thalia lifted her weapon. Defiance pure and cold. You will leave this world. Leave. The creature's voice coiled through the chamber. No. I will finish what I began when your stars were young. The heart belongs to the void. John stepped forward, every motion amplified by the armor's radiance. Not while I'm breathing. The Void Lord's laughter was low, distorted. You could breathe the cosmos itself. Join me, and the heart will make you its master. Refuse, and it will consume you as it consumed the last Guardian. For an instant, the armor pulsed with conflicting signals, data storms, visions of empires falling, the whisper of infinite power. The temptation struck like static under his skin. He saw himself standing among galaxies, commanding legions, unbound by mortality. Then Thalia's voice cut through the haze. John, look at me. He did. The temptation faltered. Her expression was fierce and certain. The same as when she had led her people to safety. The same as when she had placed her hand over his heart in the sanctum. Through their link, he felt her steadiness flow into him, grief, courage, trust. It was enough to steady the storm inside the suit. John's voice came out low but resolute. I didn't come here for power. I came to keep a promise. The Void Lord's shape convulsed, anger rippling through its form. Then you will die keeping it. Dark energy erupted, swallowing the dais. John threw up a shield, the impact slamming through him like a tidal wave. Thalia darted to the side, her own weapons flaring in counterlight. The clash of their energies filled the hall with brilliance and shadow, each strike reverberating like thunder. John moved through the chaos, guided by the armor's memory and his own instinct, the suit converting every motion into something almost dance-like. He felt Thalia near him. Their minds, brushing through the neural link strategy, passed without words. Heartbeat to heartbeat. She drew the creature's fire, he countered, striking from the blind side. The Void Lord recoiled, shrieking, its form flickering as the light burned through it. But the victory was momentary. With a roar, the creature plunged its tendrils into the crack around the heart. The blue radiance began to darken, twisting toward violet corruption. The whole palace shook. Thalia staggered. It's corrupting the heart. John knew they were out of time. Then we use what the armor was made for. He reached for the glowing core, energy coursing through his gauntlet. Pain lanced through him, but the armor absorbed it, channeling the force into a harmonic pulse. Light spread from his chest, pushing back the void energy, inch by inch. Focus with me, he shouted. Through the link, Thalia joined him, her hands pressing against the glowing sigils on his armor. Together, their energy flared. Twin currents feeding into the heart's light. The void screamed, its form unraveling under the flood of purity. The chamber became a storm of brilliance. When the radiance finally faded, silence fell. The tendrils dissolved to ash. The heart beat steadily again, blue and alive. The Void Lord was gone, its essence scattered to starlight. John swayed, drained but standing. Thalia caught his arm, steadying him. Her voice was quiet, reverent. The heart, it recognizes you now. He looked down at the faint glow pulsing through his chest plate. No, he said softly. It recognizes us. Outside, the clouds began to clear. The first dawn light since the invasion broke across the shattered skyline, illuminating the survivors below who looked upward and saw their world reborn. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the light from the heart of Alaris spilled outward in a rolling wave that washed across the city, repairing what could still live and cleansing what could not. The shattered palace walls straightened, as if exhaling after centuries of tension. The gardens outside flickered from ash gray to green. Every surviving citizen felt it a warmth that sank past skin and bone, whispering, "You are safe." John stood at the center of it, armor still humming, energy flowing like tide water through every seam. He wasn't glowing now in the blinding way of battle, but in a softer pulse, the color of dawn. Thalia watched him from the dais steps, her face caught between exhaustion and wonder. "It's finished," she said at last, her voice trembling in the silence. Yon turned, the helmet retracting with a faint sigh. The air hit his face cool and new. The void rifts are closing, the armor's sealing them from orbit to core. Her eyes shone. "You've saved my world." He shook his head. "We did." The heart responded to both of us. For a long moment, neither spoke. The heart pulsed once more between them, steady as breath, before dimming to a gentle rhythm that matched theirs. Outside, cheers rose from the city. Soldiers, healers, civilians, all looking up at the palace as its light touched every tower. The Guardian had become legend again, not as a weapon, but as proof that hope could return. 3 months later, Valoria glowed again under clear skies. The scars of war remained blackened towers, gaps in the skyline, but new structures grew beside them, built of crystal and living vines that hummed with promise. The people called them rebirth halls. On the royal balcony, John watched the twin suns set. The armor now part of him flickered faintly under his uniform's collar. He had learned to summon or dismiss it at will, though the fragment of the heart embedded in its chest plate always stayed with him, a reminder pulsing against his skin. Footsteps approached, light and familiar. "You still prefer the view to the ceremony," Thalia said, amusement softening her tone. John smiled. "Hard to top this view. The Federation never had sunsets that looked like a planet forgiving itself." She stepped beside him, dressed not in mourning silks, but in the white and gold robes of a crowned queen. The coronation had taken place that morning. The council unanimous. For once, in the crowd's chant, he had heard 1,000 voices say her name as both ruler and savior. "The Federation envoy left an hour ago," she continued. "They accepted the new treaty and your resignation from their fleet." Yon exhaled, half in relief, half in disbelief. After what happened here, they didn't have a choice. Besides, they're gaining an ambassador, not losing a soldier. Ambassador, protector, partner, she said, the corners of her lips curving. They'll discover soon enough that titles are fluid things. The teasing warmth in her eyes caught him more off guard than any battle. "Is that an Illyrian proverb?" "It's a Thalian one," she replied. "Newly written." He laughed. And for the first time in months, it was unguarded. "So what now?" "Your Majesty." Her gaze drifted across the city, its people rebuilding. Children chasing luminous birds that had returned after the storm. "Now we heal. And we remember. The heart will need guardians, not generals." She turned back to him. Seriousness, tempered by affection. "You've given my people something I couldn't, the chance to believe in the impossible again." John looked at her. Then down at the pulse of light, glowing faintly beneath his ribs. "Maybe that's what the armor saw when it chose us. Not weapons, just connection." Thalia reached out, resting her hand over the light at his chest. The glow brightened, responding to her touch, casting a soft halo around them both. "Then let that be our vow," she said quietly. "No more walls between worlds." He covered her hand with his own. No more walls. The sun sank below the horizon, leaving the sky awash with indigo and silver. Stars appeared one by one, no longer distant threats, but bridges waiting to be crossed. Somewhere out there, Earth revolved under the same light, its people unaware that their blood carried echoes of Alaris. One day, they would learn. For now, the Guardian and the Queen stood together on the balcony of a world reborn, watching the first stars of peace take their places.